From the Grand Ballroom at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven, thank you for joining us as we celebrate more than 20 years of presenting important and timely discussions. Corporate Club is the direct link for community leaders to connect with regional businesses, government, and nonprofit organizations. This series of programs deals with those issues and persons that impact on the lives of those who live in Northeastern Ohio. Corporate Club at Landerhaven begins right now.
I'm very excited to be here at Public Auditorium. Historic building. The city has done some wonderful remodeling, as you can see down here. This was done largely for the Rock Hall inductions, but it's got tremendous uses. We've had weddings, we've had corporate events, and I'm sure for many of you this is the first time that you've been down here, or it's been a long time since you've been here. Somebody was telling me that the last time they were here was in 1985 to hear Roberta Flack in concert, so that was a lot of that. Anyway, for Corporate Club, I'd like to obviously thank our sponsors, without whom this program would not be possible. First, I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Medical Mutual. Thank you all for your support over the years. Inside Business, Consolidated Graphics, the Collection Auto Group, we have WCPN 90.3 Idea Stream, we have Northern Ohio Area Chambers of Commerce and the Greater Cleveland Partnership. So please have a hand for our sponsors.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Executive Caterers Corporate Club Luncheon at the historic Cleveland Public Hall. I am honored to be your moderator. My name is Wayne Dawson from Fox 8 News in the Morning. We're talking about leadership this afternoon. As you know, these are challenging times for many leaders, not only here in Northeast Ohio, but also around the nation. Indeed, the President himself facing a serious crisis in leadership concerning the Affordable Care Act. As a matter of fact, he'll be landing here in Northeast Ohio for the next hour or so. So our question this afternoon is, what does it take to be an effective leader? Today's discussion is about emerging leaders, and we are honored to have 4 young leaders with us this afternoon. They are, to my immediate left, Jonathan Leiken, the president of the Cleveland Bar Association. Dalithia Smith, HR Director for North America at Leiken Electric. Brian Zimmerman, the CEO of the Cleveland Metroparks. And Meredith Scerba, who is the Senior Vice President of the Cleveland Sports Commission. Let's give them a round of applause. My first question is to Brian, and we were talking about this backstage just for a minute, and it has to do with the keys to effective leadership. What would you say are the important keys to an effective leader?
Well, first and foremost, thank you everyone for coming today to hear from this panel. I have to say in the back we were laughing and convincing quite a bit, like we had known each other for years, literally years. And to me, you know, having a sense of humor and a way to connect with people is certainly one of the things that I would say first and foremost. I gave a little example with that. If all the people will participate, if everybody could just raise their hand, just raise your hand up, please. Okay, where everybody's hand is right now, what I look at is that's your daily job. Now stretch your hand just a little bit higher. Okay, that's going just a little bit more above and beyond. Now I want 10 more %. How much higher can you get your hand? So as a leader, that's what I'm looking for, is that top 10%. You can put your hands down. I appreciate you indulging me, but it's really symbolic of the leadership at Cleveland Metroparks, what we look for in our employees and our managers. We're looking to always get that next 10% from our staff. We're in the customer service business. We have over 16 million customers that visit Cleveland Metroparks. We have a strong tradition to uphold. And so we're always looking for those next level of leaders and really getting that next 10%.
Excellent, excellent. Meredith, you are with the Cleveland Sports Commission before that with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Talk about what you would call defining moments that have shaped your career as a leader.
Sure. I think there's a series of things have happened throughout my life that have gotten me to where I am today. Starting as a college athlete and being a swimmer at a Division II school, I had the opportunity to be voted in as a team captain in my junior and senior years. And I think being chosen in that role showcased that I was not only just a good leader, but I was a listener. I listened to what my team wanted, and we had been through a lot of turmoil. We'd been through 3 head coaches in 3 years. And so they turned to me to be not only the one that listened, but also the voice of our team. So I think that kind of started spearheading a lot of my efforts and really started to develop me as a leader. And then I went on to the Cavaliers, and it was interesting because it was actually a brand new position. It didn't even exist in the NBA or even at the team. So I got to take on this role and really develop it and create it. And they, again, listened to me and were able to evolve into a position that's actually now mimicked throughout all teams in the NBA. So I felt like I was continuing down that right path, and then landed at the Sports Commission and been there for 9 years now. And our president has continued to give me a lot of opportunities to be in a leadership role and continue to move down that path where I've served just recently as executive director for the senior games and so forth. And then even on my social side of it, I'm the president of WISE, Women in Sports and Events. So I kind of took all the things that I've been doing through my sports and business and took it to a group of women that I thought would, that share the same passions as I do, and became kind of that empowering voice behind us in our industry.
Any one of you could answer this question. Are leaders born or are they made?
To me, everybody has a little bit of leader inside them and just has to awaken sort of your inner leader. And I think it's sort of the best in all of us when we find that. I mean, if you think about the things in your life that make you most proud, it's probably something where you were being a leader in one way or another. And as I was getting ready for this panel, I was thinking about what is a leader. To me, it's somebody that inspires, somebody that stands up in front of someone else, either a group of people or another person, and inspires them, makes them feel excited about things that they can do, things that they can accomplish. And I think we all have that in us, and at the best times of our lives, we're being leaders.
Jonathan, as president of the Cleveland Bar Association, you're often dealing with A-type personalities. How do you lead those type of individuals?
It's not easy, actually. Right? I've been president of the bar for the last 6 months, and I've been shocked, actually, at how many conflicts there are between those A-type personalities. And but we're all bound together by one thing, which is Cleveland and our love of this city. It's such an amazing place, and really all you have to do is start talking about this place and what's special about it and this region and our future, and everybody sort of melts, all the conflict melts away, and we start working together.
Dalithia, and Meredith, you can chime in as well. Talk about the issues of being a woman in leadership.
Well, one of the things that's really important is that as a woman, you keep your identity. In my environment, most of my internal customers are men, even though the members of my HR team, we have a very diverse team.
What do you mean by keeping your identity?
Keeping your identity that there's different personality types, there's different traits that each individual person will have in doing their own job. Coming into a role where your primary customer is a different gender, you really have to own the skills and who you are in order to lead. So keeping my identity means the skill of being empathetic, the skill of being a good listener, having good communication skills. We all run a million miles a minute, but taking the time to keep the core of who I am and use those tools in being a great leader and having people actually recognize you for that. It's so crazy around here, but you take the time to actually listen to us and be able to apply what you heard to whatever solution you need.
Are there different styles between men and women leaders?
I think there is, but there's a lot of similarities as well. I think the core traits of a leader are things that we've all discussed as far as being able to build great relationships, being a great communicator, listening, really understanding, and being that being the person that's going to lead by example and be the the best you can be every day. That's across gender.
Meredith, issues?
Yeah, I absolutely agree that I'm also coming from the sports industry, which is very male-dominated, and I find that, not making up excuses. Women should be proud of being in whatever industry you're in. So I think men face just as many challenges as women, each in their own different ways. But I think too, making sure your voice is heard, being who you are, and your work will serve its purpose, and that's what they'll identify you for. Not because you're a man, a woman, black, white, whatever. You're gonna make your name for yourself based on what you do.
Brian, how well should you know yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, as far as being a leader is concerned?
Well, that's a great question, and I think it's one of the traits that leaders will find. They will know and harness their strengths, their individuality. They'll be authentic, but as they're building teams, they have to know what their complementary sides are. And so, as I built the team at Cleveland Metroparks, there were certain aspects and things that we were looking for. We actually basically went through a Pradco session with all of our high-level executives and really identified driving results, communication, those type of things. So it's one of the most important things you can do as you're building a team to really work together and to really play off of each other.
Excellent. This next question is posed to you, Jonathan, but you guys can, each one of you, I'd like you to answer. Talk about the individuals who were your mentors, who played a role in who you are right now and your leadership style.
Sure. So for me, it starts with my dad, who was a lawyer when I was growing up, and he was actually a law professor when I was a little kid, and so he used to bring me, at Case Western Reserve, he used to bring me to class with him while he was being Socratic up at the front. He'd be Socratic with us at home too, but I'd sit in the back and watch him talk, and it was all about ideas and right and wrong, and I didn't understand it, but I found it really compelling, so I always wanted to be like my dad. That's how I got into the law. But here in Cleveland, we have such an amazing legal community. You can't turn around without bumping into 6 or 7 role models, from people like Dick Pogue, who basically built the Rock Hall, to all the great judges and jurists that have come through Cleveland. So it's a very inspiring place, a lot of leaders around.
I would say my mom as well. Growing up, I would watch her and say, how do you do everything that you do? From managing the household, she's a school teacher, just retired after 40 plus years, and being able to keep my brother and I in check and keep us happy. And, I think back to all the hard times I gave her and appreciate now as a mother and say, oh my God, how did you do it? And I apologize for everything that I've been through. But she's a role model because she really taught me to have a strong work ethic and to never give up and to keep going. And throughout business, I've met great people and have great people in my life right now that I learn a little bit every time I am able to meet and interact with them, learn from their experiences, the mistakes that they've made, and how they can inspire me not to make the same mistakes.
I have to say there's kind of two, and one was very early on that got me kind of into the golf career. My grandfather was a retired dairy farmer, so he was always used to getting up very early in the morning. I learned that you could have a career or profession in taking care of golf courses, and really his work ethic, going through. And I was able to get a job at 15 years old and work for a golf course, and he happened to be my godfather, Randy Smith, and he really had that can-do attitude. It didn't matter what the challenge was, we always figure out a way to get it done. And so when you look at challenges that may come up, you have to find solutions and answers to be able to accomplish things. And so that's really the ability that leaders should have is, if you get blocked one way, you have to back up, move over, and go at it again, because at the end of the day, you really need to get something accomplished.
And I'm going to preview this. My boss is not in the audience. I'm not trying to get brownie points here. But my current president and boss and good friend, so I think that's always a major component to it. It's not just being a boss, he's my true friend, is David Gilbert. And he's the president of our organization as well as Positively Cleveland. And he's taught me over the 9 years a lot about not just business, about me, personally as well, and how you juggle that life-work balance. we work crazy hours. We're a small nonprofit doing a lot of different things, and so I watch how he leads us, as we go into things and have to figure them all out. And he helps guide us through that process. But even more so, we were all talking in the back, a couple of us are transplants here, and I'm not from Cleveland, but the man is so compassionate, it is extremely contagious, and so to come into a city and fall in love with it because of someone who needs you, and you believe in it, and he's really done that to a lot of us in our staff.
As a leader, how do you energize your troops? How do you give them the passion that you have? How do you pass that on? Jonathan?
Well, I think you teach them about the idea of inspiring. You inspire them. People get inspired when they think, oh, they hear someone else say something or do something and they think, I can do that, or that's something that I can accomplish. And we've tried to do that at the Bar Association this year by starting a website, which I'm going to pitch to you all now, because we're focused on brain gain here in Cleveland. And so we started a website called the Brain Gain Cleveland Project. And if you go to it, and I encourage everyone in the room to please do that, it's braingaincleveland.com, and you can sign up as what we call a scout. That is somebody who's out there looking to grow the city. That's all it's about. Think of it as a Facebook page for Cleveland. So we've tried to give people an avenue to bring the love back into Cleveland and keep it flowing and do something like that.
Brian, do you have to be a people? Now you have a great personality.
Thank you.
Do you have to have that? Do you have to be a people person to be an effective leader?
Well, it certainly helps. I think you can think back to, potentially different, conflicts or wars or different things, different generals that people would emulate. So I think, there are certain situations for the more serious side, but I think I have the best job in all of Cleveland, working for the citizens of Cuyahoga County. Cleveland Metroparks is really, we try to call it the Department of Fun. We try to create an atmosphere where people, whether we're playing volleyball in the hallway or, doing things like that, there has to be some ways to keep things light and have some humor. We always try to preach when you answer the phone, put a smile on your face, because it changes, the way you may answer that phone call, and it's always, you never know who's on the other end. So certainly I think, being charismatic and really, Jonathan, played the piano at the Bar Association, and again, we had a lot of fun just in our little half hour that we spent together. So.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you have to have a title to be a leader? Do you have to be designated the leader, or can you have other ways?
Everyone in this room has some leadership capability, regardless of title, regardless of position that you're in. It's doing the right thing every day. It's taking that next step to say, okay, what's the best way to do this, and being that example for everyone else that's around you. Title really doesn't mean too much. You can have a title maybe that helps get you to places that you need to have access to, but you don't have to have a title. Everybody should exhibit those traits, be the example, do the right thing on a daily basis.
Meredith, I'm going to start with you, but I want each one of you to answer this next question. Advice to emerging leaders.
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, staying true to who you are, know where you came from, and never lose sight of your goals, so you can continue down the path you set.
I think it's something we learned in kindergarten. Treat others as you would want to be treated. And I think the reality is, as you go through, even as you move up in an organization, you still can't forget who you are. And remember your pleases and thank yous, because there are people doing great things, and to recognize them, to send them a little note. But again, it's treat others as you would want to be treated.
Be a student of life. Never stop learning. Regardless of how many degrees or what you know, you can always learn something new. You reinvent yourself every day by learning something new.
I would say, don't be afraid. Life is about taking risks, and there's a great story I love about a bunch of creatures who lived at the bottom of a river, and they're all clinging to the side of the river and afraid to let go. And then one day, one of the creatures says, to heck with it, I'm bored, I'm just going to let go. And all the other creatures say, you're crazy, you're going to get crushed on those rocks downstream, don't let go. And the creature just says, look, if I don't let go, I'm going to just die of boredom. So he does, and he gets crushed, he gets completely crushed. But then over time, he bounces along the rocks, and he learns that the river just wants to set you free and just push you down the river. And as he passes down other creatures down the river, they see him and they're like, look, it's a creature just like us, but he's flying. And he calls down, he says, no, the river wants to do this for us, just let go. And that's what I think about leadership.
Each one of you guys are effective leaders, and just talking to you, you love what you do. But there has to be a downside. There have to be crises that you guys face. Talk about some of the crises that you face being a leader. Meredith, I'll start with you.
Well, I'm in the event business, so we deal with crisis all the time. I think the important part about it is that you have to just be prepared. Whether your company is going through a lawsuit or you're being put in the wrong light, you just have to have a plan in place and know all the points and be prepared to take action.
I would say surround people that you can trust. Because as a leader, you want to know if something's not going well. You want people that will speak up and say, look, this pathway isn't necessarily the best. So I try to surround myself with folks that will always come forward and speak up. So when you're handling whatever it happens to be, I mean, it could be the smallest thing, but you want to have that open and honest communication. You want people that will reach out and say, hey, look, this may be a challenge, a pitfall, an obstacle, a hurdle, something to go through. But you really need to have people that you can trust.
And then in a crisis situation, a lot of times you just want to react. Just take a moment to breathe and assess the situation and then make a plan. You can do that quickly, but just don't immediately react, because sometimes that immediate reaction may make that crisis even worse if you don't follow the appropriate steps.
I'm a crisis manager for a living. That's what I do in my business. And so I always just think of it as, to use another analogy, a roller coaster. You have dips, but you can't overreact with the dip. There's always something coming, and you just up and down.
How do you keep that balance, though? I mean, is that difficult to keep sometimes?
It is. I mean, I was just dealing with a crisis an hour ago, and you just have to look down the track and realize that it's a long track, it's a long career, and you just keep riding it out.
The most difficult thing about being a leader, the most difficult thing, would you say is? Anybody?
Patience is great genius. I'm a very impatient person. The team that surrounds me, I like to get things done and move things forward. But you do have to have some patience. Some things do need to grow organically. Cleveland is the biggest small town, I think, in America. Everybody knows someone through someone. So I think, again, being true to yourself, but having that patience level to make sure that you're looking at 30,000 feet, looking at 20. And sometimes you really have to get down into it to either solve the problem or move things forward.
Listen, are you hands-on or are you a delegator? What would you say?
I'm hands-on.
You hands-on?
Absolutely hands-on. Hands-on because I want to be with the team. I want to work with people. I love fostering relationships. Being a delegator, sometimes you have to do it because you can't do everything yourself. But being hands-on allows you to learn, allows you to get to know people and form those relationships and just be in the midst of it.
I'm both. I'm looking at my staff right now. But I think over the time, when we were a smaller organization, there was only like 6 of us, you had no choice but do it all. And then as we've continued to grow, it was hard to let go.
Yeah.
And even though you're hands-on, and I like to show by example too, I'm going to move just as many boxes. But it's important for them to each have their own piece of it too. So delegation becomes a part of how you let go to make sure at the end of the day you're getting it done the best, the most effective and efficient way.
John, how important is mentoring when it comes to leadership?
It's the biggest part of it. I mean, leadership doesn't exist without someone being led. Somebody has to be on the other side who's receptive to your ideas. So being a teacher and a mentor, that's, communicating with someone in a meaningful way is what it's all about. And I've been incredibly lucky to work with just such talented people in my career and now at the Bar Association who want to be inspired, and that inspires me in round and round.
Brian, what do you look for when it comes to individuals you'd like to mentor? What are you looking for?
Well, it's interesting. We're actually working on a reverse mentoring program because it goes up and down. The way technology is continually changing. Eric's probably over there putting things on Twitter or Snapchat, or all these different things that are going on. And so we've actually created a little bit of reverse mentoring because the technology is changing so rapidly we can't necessarily always keep up. but also you have to give the time back. My wife and I actually had a number of young adults stay with us throughout periods of time in their life, and I see each one of them have developed, created a family, bought a house, and so sometimes you have to know where your place is to help them along, and sometimes it's to pick them up when they've fallen, sometimes they have to fall, but be there when the successes happen.
But if you talk about mentoring as it relates to you being an African-American woman, where does that put you?
Well, for me, it's important to give back. And raising a daughter and just being, I mentor a lot of high school students and even mentoring for young professionals coming up through the HR ranks. It's important to just be able to understand different challenges that you may go through, whether it's being underprivileged or coming up in an environment where everyone doesn't look like you. Giving back to show I came from a similar environment, hard work, dedication, motivation, doing well in school, networking, not being afraid to stand up. You just have to give back because mentoring allows that next generation to come up and be successful as well.
When it comes to being a leader, I mean, it takes a lot. It takes a lot out of you. How much do you take home? I mean, does it affect your personal life? Does it affect your privacy, Meredith?
Absolutely. I think I don't think we ever quit working. We always joke about that at Sports Commission, but I think that's one of the things that kind of goes along with leadership is, as you go through the ranks, when I first started, I didn't have to worry about budgets and I didn't have to worry about the bottom line. Mm-hmm. And as you keep going, it becomes a part of your day-to-day where you're going, oh geez, this event's doing this, instead of just making sure your porta potties are out. You start looking at things in a lot of different ways. And I definitely think the stress level increases, but I think, again, it goes back to learning how to juggle and learning how to, and I'm still learning, but trying to figure out some time for your family because they're just as important and will be there through the end more so than even a job will. So I think it's important to find that equal medium or at least getting that balance in your life. It's critical.
Brian, you have a family. Could you talk about it?
I do. I think part of it is that when you go through something that you're extremely passionate about, and I love what I do, so it has become part of our life, our lifestyle. Certainly there is a definite balance. The on-demand world, it was interesting, we actually put our phones down when we came up here, and I'm like, where's my phone? I should be doing something. But the reality is you do need to have those times to unplug and be part of it and make sure you're connected to your family. I enjoy studying Spanish and music with my son, two things that and working with him, and then certainly it is very important to leave some of the things at work.
How important is it to you to unplug, to get away from the work and being the leader at work?
Well, my daughter wouldn't allow me to not unplug, so I have an 11-year-old who reminds me, Mommy, you're at home, you gotta step away a little bit, and I appreciate her for doing that because it's very easy to get caught up in the stress and to come home and to bring it home to your family, but you have to remember that it's going to be there tomorrow, or it'll be there later, and I want to set the same example for my family at home as I do in the office. So helping my daughter with her homework, just hanging out, having fun with her. She is the funniest person I know, so just laughing, taking time to laugh at home. It's just, you got to unplug,
Jonathan, what about you? You said your dad was your role model. What did he teach you about the separation of work and home?
Well, he wasn't very good at that. But it's funny, I took my 6-year-old daughter to ice cream recently, and she was eating her ice cream, and she looked up at me and she said, Dad, what's your job? And I said, Sasha, don't you know what my job is? And she thought about it a second. She said, are you principal of the bar association? And to her, being a principal, that's like the biggest thing in the world. She goes to school, so I just said, yeah, that's what I am. I'm the principal of the bar association. But it's interesting to see how your kids, and she doesn't appreciate also that that's like my hobby. I mean, I'm a full-time lawyer, but what she hears me talk about and be real excited about is the bar association. So it's interesting to see.
You guys are all young leaders here in the city of Cleveland, but who do you look up to? Who would you designate as young leaders, not only here in Northeast Ohio, but even on the national scene? Who would you say is an up-and-coming young leader? I'll start with you, Meredith.
Well, I keep going back to my boss, but he is someone who is setting the bar in Cleveland, specifically about how this, the city is going through a really fun time, and between his job at Positivity Cleveland and everything that they're doing at their organization and at the sports commission as we continue to bring in economic impact, he's definitely helping be a big part of that.
Right. That's one question I didn't prepare for, to be fair. So, I mean, it's just, it's interesting in the last, 90 days we've kind of lived in a little bit of a bubble, but I mean, I think there's, there are great things happening, all over. I mean, when you look at the way Facebook is rolled out, you look at, the folks from Snapchat just turned down, a few $1 billion to become part of that family. So, I mean, you're seeing leadership, all over exhibited, and that's a pretty bold move that those folks did to turn or rebuff, Facebook. So.
Well, my daughter's school, they have an environmental club, and when I look at these young women and these young men who are volunteering to do great things for our environment, to clean up our environment and help make sure our planet and our earth can be sustained. Those are young leaders that I admire and look up to, because this is totally on their own interest, on their own effort. They don't have to do this. And the minds that they have and how creative they are being and how passionate about it at such a young age is very inspiring.
I have the privilege to do a good amount of legal work for Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cavs. And I don't know, you know Dan, or I've spent time with Dan, but I find him completely inspiring. The way that he looks at our city, and also the way that he's looking at the city of Detroit as just a place of opportunity, and his theories about bringing people downtown to both live and work and play, and then everything expands from there. I totally buy into it, and the things he's doing, I think, are really, really
How would you describe his leadership style?
Very powerful, funny, off the cuff. I mean, I'm copied on emails. You guys read, the LeBron letter, so imagine the day-to-day dealing with him. It's quite an experience, and imagine being his lawyer. It's something, and it's a great honor. But he really is. I mean, when I'm around him, I'm inspired, and to me, that's leadership.
That's good stuff. This is my favorite question, and it is: what movie best exemplifies leadership to you? Start with you.
I just watched this weekend. It's Forrest Gump, believe it or not. Reason being is he had his challenges, but he was always positive, and always had just that, regardless, I'm going to keep pushing forward, I can do it, and just always just positive, smiling. You have to have the tenacity and resilience to keep going, and that's what I see in him.
It's a great love story too, believe it or not.
Absolutely.
He loved him some Jenny.
He did.
When we were talking in the back, and I was counting Caddyshack, if anybody's watched Caddyshack. Carl had a task, and his task was to kill all the gophers. The gophers. And at the end of the movie, he really completed that task. He blew the whole place up.
Well, let's stick with my sports theme, but Remember the Titans.
Oh, yeah.
Great movie. It's extremely inspiring, and Denzel Washington's part in the movie showcases how he took such diversity and brought everyone together, despite everything around, their color of skin and everything they were dealing with, and made them believe, and look how successful they were because they did. He was a good leader in that way.
For me, it's probably Dead Poet Society, and that scene at the end when all the students get up on the desks and stand there and say, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," and you just know that he connected with them and taught them something important in their lives. That always brings tears to my eyes.
Getting back to your own personal struggles or your own personal situations, when you kind of look at yourself, what are some bad habits that you had to overcome? Sometimes it's hard looking in the mirror, I know. But if you could say, to be honest, Meredith, are there anything that you had to overcome as far as habits you had to break to be a leader?
Well, I'm still overcoming them, but I think when you're striving to succeed and get that next level, you overcommit. You try to do too much, and then that's when other parts of your life are lacking, whether it be self-help or your family or whatever it might be. And I think that's stepping back for a second and not stopping that drive so we can succeed, but make sure you're doing it within your perimeters.
Within your perimeters.
Balance for me. I mean, it's because I love promoting Cleveland and doing those types of things. My wife and my son remind me very often of trying to create that balance. And as a leader, it's one of those things where if your job went away today, your family is what stays with you. And so, as a leader, you really have to be very mindful of not turning an eye to that, because you can get caught up in the moment. And I'm sending text messages at 5 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, because it's the momentum to keep things moving. But there are times for that. There are other times to have that other part of the balance.
Taking time for myself. I have to make sure that after taking care of everybody else, I need that time, because if I'm not here, I can't continue to serve people. So ensuring that I stay healthy and active and being here as long as I can.
I would say overvaluing your own ideas. Sometimes we're so busy trying to get things done, and we just want to get things done, and we want to be a leader. And sometimes I forget that, wait a second, there's other people sitting around the table here whose ideas are just as important as mine. And just stop for a second and listen, being a better listener.
How important is teamwork? It has to be extremely important. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, that's the whole goal. Sure.
Wow. You guys are absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. But what are some of the things that you would tell someone who wants to be in your position, who wants to follow in your footsteps? They may be young, they may be in high school. What should they start doing now to get moving? Meredith?
Sure. I think that first and foremost, learn from our mistakes and
That's a good point. But you have to learn from your own mistakes as well.
Absolutely, and I think that setting that goal. I'm very goal oriented, but setting the goals, if that's what they want to do, what are the things they need to do now to get to that point? So if you're in high school, if you're in college, it's not about waiting to the 11th hour to start doing the things to get you where you want to be. But you're never too young to start. So start thinking about what that needs to be.
Goal setting is very important.
Absolutely.
Right.
I would say accepting challenges. Getting to Cleveland at age 37 and running, one of the most iconic institutions in Cleveland. There wasn't a challenge that I turned down, to be quite honest. And having coached high school athletes for quite a number of years and being able to move up is, don't turn down a challenge, make it an opportunity to either grow. I always use the rubber band analogy, keep stretching the rubber band, because otherwise it's just going to stay in its normal form and not produce.
Have the belief that nothing is impossible. Whatever you set your mind to do, as long as you work hard at it and be resourceful, anything that you want, I truly believe that you can accomplish it.
Interesting, yeah.
My son, I was just driving with him yesterday, and he said to me, he said, Dad, when I grow up, first I'm going to try out for the NHL. If I don't make that, then I'm going to try out for Major League Baseball. And if I don't make that, then I'm going to try out for the NFL.
Yeah.
And then, if I don't make that, he said, I think I'll make movies. And
He's athletic and creative.
Right, he is. And I just thought to myself, I hope he never loses any of those goals.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't think he's going to make any major league sports teams, but maybe he will.
Maybe he'll make movies.
You're right, but that's what I said to him. Movies. That's great. Do something new about it.
That's very. You obviously all have passion. You love what you're doing. I would imagine that's one of the keys of effective leadership. But here's another question I have for you. You have to be a good follower to be a good leader, true or false? Do you have to first be someone who can take orders?
I think it's important to be able to take orders, but then you also have to have a voice as well. So don't just drift in the background.
Okay.
You have to understand and watch your environment to be able to apply it to the next circumstance.
I think I learned the most from probably my worst boss, because what it really taught me is that that's not how I want to lead effectively. And so if you think back in your careers, I see a few people nodding their heads, there are realities in the world, and there are situations that you find yourself in, but they don't define you. I mean, you have the ability to make that change and move things forward. So you take those things, you process, you put them away, and you say, if I'm in that position, that's how I would handle it. So you put yourself in that place, and eventually you will get to there.
My boss is telling me it's time to take a break. So we're going to take a little break right here, and we'll be back, and we'll have questions from the audience, okay? Let's give our panelists the Corporate Club, sponsored by Executive Caterers. We are talking about leadership this morning, emerging leaders, and we have Jonathan Leiken, who is the president of the Cleveland Bar Association, Dalithia Smith, who is the HR director for Lincoln Electric here in North America. We have Brian Zimmerman, who's the CEO of the Cleveland Metroparks, and Meredith Scerba, who is the vice president of the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission. It is now the time for us to have a little audience participation, and we would ask any of you who have questions to raise your hand, and you can ask questions to any one of our panelists.
You can answer this question referring to your professional or personal life. But when you first meet someone, whether that be a friend of a friend or someone you plan on hiring, what is the first attribute about their personality that you look for to see if they're the type of leaders or person that you want to have close to you or around in your circle?
I'll go ahead and start. I look at their shoes. And I'll tell you why. I mean, it's first cuff, when you look at people's shoes, you can tell whether they're taking care of them, you can tell a little bit about their style, but I always look at people's shoes, and when I see people come into interviews with scuffed shoes and dirt on their shoes, when you're coming in for an interview, you're meeting somebody for the first time, it's just a very interesting way to kind of learn just a little bit about their personalities.
What I think for those who know me, I'm a woman huggy. I love to hugs and a lot of eye contact that we were talking about in the back. So I'm not expecting someone who doesn't know me to hug me, but I think just having that rapport to look them in the eyes, to talk to them, to feel like, you know, that you're not pulling words out of their mouth, but looking for how easy it is to talk with them.
Same, eye contact with someone who smiles. If you don't smile and you're kind of stuffy, I don't want you on my team. We have to have fun together, so you gotta smile and be open.
I'm looking to see whether somebody is a good listener. Whether somebody is actually, they say that we spend much more time focusing when we introduce ourselves on how our own name sounds than on the name of the person that we're learning about. And I'm curious always to see whether somebody's actually listening.
Thank you very much.
Question, how important is it to remember names to be an effective leader? How important is that?
I personally think it's one of the #1 things you can do because you take a little bit of time. I mean, our organization is very large, and having coached for so many years, even as been involved in sports, normally by the end of the first week, whether I had 40 or 50 kids, my goal was to know every student athlete's name. And so when you look at this organization, I try very, very hard to know everyone's name and know something about them because it's that personal side, that personal connection.
When I was in the U.S. Attorney's office, there was a woman in the office who I called Barb for over a year, and her name was Stacy. And finally I heard someone in the hall, I didn't work with her, I just asked her, I heard someone call her Stacy, and I said, Barb? What is that? And she said, after a couple of weeks, I just decided not to correct you. So then I just kept calling her Barb.
That's a good person to introduce somebody.
Yeah, right?
We have another question from the audience.
Yes, thank you for this wonderful opportunity to hear all of you speak. I'm wondering, at what point in your lives did you realize I want to be the leader?
My mother would say, as soon as I learned how to talk. Very early on in school, I was part of student council, was president of the class, and even just in all the activities, I wanted to be the one that had some influence as far as what we did, how we did it. So I feel as though it's just been a trait that has been a part of me ever since I can remember.
And I don't ever remember identifying an actual time that was what I knew that I wanted to do. I think it just kind of evolved through my experiences and just kind of over time and who I am and what I do. So I would say it just came naturally over time. And I think when you're passionate about something, you tend to be good at it. And I think I'm driven by that, of the passion for what I do.
I think I gravitated early on through high school, went to a lot of leadership things, ended up in DC, and then kind of learned from a number of folks, lead, follow, or get out of the way. So I think that tells you kind of which bucket you want to be in, and do you want to be the influencer, or do you want to be influenced? So I think those things are kind of how you think about leadership.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I always wanted attention. I wanted everybody to look at me, and I was always taking people's hats and running around, you know. And I think over time you learn to channel it to something good. That's the difference between just wanting attention and being a leader.
Next question. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great hearing you guys. My name is Srinivas. I work with Leiken Mutual. I'm part of the Emerging Leaders program within the company, and most of the points you said, I've heard through the program, but it's been very interesting. One of my questions is, how do you go about setting your goals? When do you cross-check those goals, or look back at the goals and say, have I accomplished it? How long do you, when do you do it, a year at a time, or day at a time? I mean, how long do you go ahead with your goals?
I think it's a great question. You know, you set your short-term and long-term goals. I think that you need to go back to them. We do it as a staff, and it is amazing that you can't wait till a month before you're supposed to go over your review to see if you did them or not. You have to stay focused, and they should be in a visual place that you can make sure that they're your guidelines. They're really how you succeed through your year. So I think the more you look at them, the better you are, because they might change a little bit. You might accomplish something very early, and that gives you a chance to keep going up to the next goal that you go from there. So short-term and long-term goals. But I wouldn't go over a year. I mean, you can definitely have long-term, but I think really keeping it within your world, within reach.
Next question.
Hi, thanks so much for being here today. Appreciate it. My question is, and you touched on it a little bit, but how important is being liked in your leadership style, and how does that differ between men and women?
You know, one of the things that I had to learn the hard way is there's going to, as much as I want people to love me, there's always going to be someone who, for whatever reason, may not like my style, but you can't let that stop you. You always remain professional and you still interact with that person. It's important for people to respect. It's more important for me to be respected than liked. So I would say that even if you don't like me, at least respect me for what I do and how I try to bring everyone in. So.
And a leader sometimes has to make tough decisions that are not popular. And in my role as bar president, I ran into a situation recently where there were two different groups, and there was no way to please both. And so I wanted to, but I just ultimately had to decide one way or the other as president, and I did.
Does it internalize it? Does that bother you sometimes?
That was awful. Yeah. It was awful. Yeah, it does. And because you want to be liked as a leader, but it really isn't the ultimate goal. And it's a great question for that reason.
Yeah, so leadership crosses all aspects of life. So home, work, and play. What do you see as the metrics? What are the metrics that you see of leadership?
I think that's going to depend on just your personal. My metrics, first and foremost, not only professionally, but I want to be a leader to my daughter. So my metric is she developing into a young woman that she can be proud of, that I'm proud of. Metrics from a professional standpoint, am I hitting my numbers? From an HR perspective, are we doing everything that we can to get the right talent in the door? Are we hiring appropriately? Are we helping with achieving our corporate vision and the strategy? So you have the normal business metrics, but in personal life is ensuring that the things that are important to you, you're making some progress in achieving those things in a way that's healthy and efficient and useful for everyone that's involved.
I think something that we haven't really touched on too much too is, we talked about our own personal successes, but I think some of the things that I like to focus on is making sure those around me, my staff, my team, continue to grow. Whether that being something I help them open a door, or making sure that I'm giving them a position or a job or responsibility that's going to help them grow within the world that they're already in. And I think that sets, that's another metric you use within your own business. It's not always about what you've accomplished, but what you can get your teams and they go off. And as much as I hate seeing them leave, I know that if they're going on to do something great and grand at their next level, that's a success. and hopefully we've been a help to be part of that.
Another question.
Good afternoon. It's been great listening to the four of you today. I'm curious to know what are the next steps in your careers? Where do you see yourself in 2 to 3 years?
Well, my appropriate judge is sitting out in the audience, so truthfully, what really motivates me, when I had the opportunity I was being recruited to come to Cleveland, there were a lot of great reasons to come to Cleveland. I mean, you can certainly fall in love with Cleveland very, very fast. It's one of the most livable cities. Certainly when you see where it's moving to right now, meeting with leaders, there is so much synergy going on. I hope I'm still here. I mean, the reality is everything that we're doing, the pieces to the puzzle, the framework is there. Now it's putting the pieces into it and continuing to move Cleveland on this great trajectory. I had an opportunity to fly down to Arizona, sitting next to a lady on the plane, and her I'll make it very quick, her comment was that Cleveland is kicking our butt right now. And she's in the hospitality business and convention recruitment. And Cleveland has really gained traction. She was in New York, and they were looking at ways that Cleveland was doing things. So I'm really happy and really, really glad to be in Cleveland.
All of you are, yes, another question? Go ahead.
Yes, my question is, as all of you are walking through your career, can you think back to one particular moment that really changed the trajectory of your career path and some of the key takeaways that you had from that moment?
I've just recently gone through, I've been in the sports commission a long time, and it's, you never want to get stale in what you do, so it's always fun to try to kind of step out of your comfort zone. In the last 2 years, I got to serve as executive director for the senior games. And so I've always been on the operations side of the business, and for the first time I had to really open up my mind and start understanding all the other elements that come along with putting on an event, such as the fundraising, the marketing, the communications, and from A to Z. And so I think it actually was a big transition for me. I felt a lot more confidence in the whole business, not just my portion of the business, and it's actually opened up a whole new world for me and what I want and what I'm trying to go after for my future.
For me, it was, I was a law clerk to a federal judge after law school. I didn't really know what direction I wanted my career to go, so I was just spending a year there, and I once watched a guy come into our courtroom who was a federal prosecutor, and he was really passionate and funny and really earnest and just a tremendous lawyer. And the guy's name is Jim Woolley, some of you may know him, and I just thought to myself, that's what I want to do. And ironically, and I did, and I became a federal prosecutor, and now I'm back in private practice, and ironically, Jim is now my law partner at Jones Day, and I get to work with him every day, so it's
All right. Let's give our panelists another round. Before we go, we'd like to have some words from the man of the hour. He is the man who is the founder and president of the Executive Caterers at Lander Haven and the Corporate Club. Harlan.
Thank you, Wayne. I am not the man of the hour, but I am the oldest man here. And I was the second oldest person here, and my friend Sally Small left a few minutes ago, but I have known her since about 70 years, and she's a couple years older than me. I want to thank my people, Uncle Charles, Christine, Sharon Smutak, and everybody here from the Executive Caterers family. I think this was a very, very, very special occasion. I don't think that there has ever been a luncheon of this magnitude in this room in 50-some years, because it's been rearranged by the city and their architects. And this is now a magnificent facility to have occasions.
I am, yes.
Okay, I know Jonathan is. I'm not so sure, but I do in the natural concrete. Okay. This is Cleveland. And I can only say that how could you have two people better represent our future as well as our natural born Clevelanders than these people. I thank this panel. This is and you can all, I can't say it. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Let's give you a round of applause. 25 years in the Corporate Club. Well, that's it. That's all the time we have. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. And this is history making, the first time we've ever done it here at the Cleveland Public Hall. So once again, thank you very much and have a great day.